everyone, it's Mrs. Abden. We're going to talk today a little bit about graphing. Now, graphing should be pretty familiar to you. You might have either seen it on Dreambox, or you've seen it in second grade or first grade, or any of those other previous grades. So we're going to first start talking about just the basics. So, what is a graph? A graph shows data, which is a fancy word for information, in many different ways. They're easy and quick to read and understand. So that's an easier way for people to collect information and to show it in a visually appealing way to make it very easy. So again, data is information. So how to make a graph? So every graph starts with either a question or some kind of criteria to collecting the data. For example, you could go around your classroom and see what color people's eyes are. So our question would be, what color are your eyes? Now, number 2 would be collect the data. So if you were asking the question, what color are your eyes? You would be marking down on a sheet of paper if somebody had a blue eyes or green eyes or brown eyes, and keeping track of how many of each. Once you've kept track of how many of each, then you can make your graph. There are a couple of different graphs we're going to talk about this week, and each of them have their own benefits. And then so we'll look at all 3 of those. And then the last step is to analyze the data. So analyze the data is a fancy way of saying we're going to read the information that we found, and we're going to be able to answer some questions about that. So the one we're going to talk about today is the frequency graph. It sometimes is also referred to as a frequency table. These are incorporating tally marks, so it's going to be very important that you are able to correctly count tally marks. And you're going to show the totals with those tally marks. So if we look at this frequency graph, there are 3 parts. There are 3 parts. We have our title, and our title tells us what we were asking, what our question or our criteria was. So for this particular frequency table, we asked birthdays in different months, okay? Then our next part is our labels. You know, all the way back to the beginning of everything, labeling is important so people know what you're talking about. So our labels in this case are months. So what our months are, and then our number of students. And the last part of our frequency table is the data itself, or the information itself, in this case tally marks for a frequency. So frequency means how often or how many. So if we look at this chart, we can tell that there were 7 students in January that had birthdays in January, and there were 4 students that had birthdays in April. So we were looking at the frequency, or how many or how often we had birthdays in these particular months. So now let's read one. We have our frequency graph over here on the right, and the title is favorite color. So that means our question or our criteria was, what is your favorite color? Our labels in this case are our color choices, and then our tallies, our data, how many. Okay, so if we're looking here, we can see that red had 5 people. Now, I would suggest going through and writing next to it how many of each and counting up your tallies all at the beginning. That's a personal preference. I believe it does help you go through when it's time to answer your questions. So let's look at question number 1. Which color is the most popular? So most popular means has the most. So if we look at our chart, which color or colors has the most? If you look, we actually have two that have the same amount. They have the most. Red and blue both have 5. So it's important to write both of them. You can't just write red and you can't just write blue. You have to write both of them. Which color is the least popular? Now, remember, least means smallest amount. So take a look at our favorite color chart and which one has the smallest amount. If you look, violet only has 1, so violet would be the least popular. And the last question, how many choices are there? So again, that's where we need to use our labels and pay attention to our graph and what they're asking us. They're not asking us how many people we asked or how many people liked a certain color. They're asking how many choices were given. So our choices were red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So if we counted those up, our choices would be 7. When you're analyzing your data, it's going to be super important to pay attention to what the question is asking you, because it's not always going to be a number. Okay, stay tuned for bar graphs on Wednesday, but before we go, I wanted to show you a little bit of help on your practice that you're going to be completing on ClassKick. So if you go onto your ClassKick e-learning page, you are going to see an assignment called Frequency Graph Practice 4-6. That is for Monday. You'll see we have a frequency table or a tally chart. Now again, like I said in the PowerPoint, I would suggest going through and counting your tally marks first. So if we look at Vanessa, she has 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Bianca has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Isabel has 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 26, 27. And do all of them first. That's going to make it easier for you to answer your questions. When you get down to your questions, there are 10 of them, and they're going to ask you some different things. So sometimes you're going to have to add some numbers, sometimes you're going to have to subtract, sometimes there's going to be more than one answer. They're going to ask for how many people, who. So pay close attention to what it's asking you. It's not always going to be a number. If they're asking you how much more did John sell than Bianca sold, you're going to find John's total minus Bianca's total. And that's how many more there are. All of your answers are going to go over here on the right-hand side, and I look forward to seeing your work. Now, if you have a question and you can't figure something out, in the top right-hand corner of yours, you're not going to see it on my screen now because I am in my teacher version, but if you go to your student version, you're going to see a raise your hand feature. If you press the raise your hand, you can type me a message, and we can chat back and forth, and I can help you through that. Or if you find the microphone at the top of your toolbar, and it might ask you, can ClassKick access your microphone? And you can say yes. Then you're going to press record and speak into your iPad and ask me whatever you're having trouble with, and then press save. And then I will be able to see that on your paper, and I can respond back to you. Okay? So I look forward to seeing everything that you're doing. Have a great day.